everyone, and welcome to the ClickFunnels Brick and Mortar Summit. My name is Bailey Richard, and I'm delighted right now to bring you a presentation by Dr. Chad Woolner. Chad is the go-to guy for creating online chiropractic marketing funnels that effectively attract and convert high-quality new patients. He started building online funnels several years ago. In fact, he was the first chiropractor to use ClickFunnels for marketing his chiropractic practice back when it was only in beta. Since then, he has been able to effectively crack the code on how to create effective funnels that actually work in the real world. He has made it a goal to base his business around his lifestyle so that he can spend more time with his family, and building funnels has done just that. He strives to help other doctors do the same, and since launching, he has helped doctors all throughout the country change both their practice and their lives. So let's see what Dr. Chad Woolner has to share with us today.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, I'm really excited about this project. When you and Russell first invited me to do this, I was like beyond excited. So really happy to be here, and hopefully I can provide you guys watching this with a ton of value. I know as a chiropractor, sometimes we use a little bit specific language in terms of customer acquisition. We obviously refer to customers as patients, but understand after the years of doing this, I've realized that these principles and strategies, they work for any service-based business, whether you're a healthcare professional, whether you're some other service-based business, you'll find that these principles that we teach here are fairly universal. So that being said, I'm going to just dig right in, and we're going to go right to it. So this whole idea of getting 100 customers in 100 days, the way I look at it is if we break it down, we roughly have 14 weeks. And so I divide them into three kind of key phases. And I don't think when I first started using funnels, I went into it with this kind of intention. But this is just kind of how it evolved. And it makes sense to me now looking back on it. It was one of those things where it just kind of, I think, fell into place very naturally. And there's a very natural evolution to this whole process. And so I hope that this makes sense for you guys as well. But basically, the first phase is what we call the sprint phase. This is called a sprint phase because it's designed to get things up and running as quickly as possible. We as small business owners, we don't have, I would say the vast majority of us don't have the luxury of being trust fund people where we just have, wonderful benefactors that give us all this money to just use. I mean, maybe occasionally that's the case, but for most of us, we're kind of on a clock, so to speak, in the sense that if you get an SBA loan, which is what I did in practice, the clock is ticking literally. The minute that you sign the papers, you're going, And so the sprint phase is really intended to get things moving as quickly as possible. But like a sprint is intended, understand that you can wear yourself out if that's all you're doing the entire time is sprinting. At some point in time, the sprint has to transition. And so then phase two is what we call the surge phase. And the surge phase is a little different in that it's designed to get a lot of new customers in the door, but it's also designed intentionally to kind of make that transition from new customer or new patient acquisition to now also helping with retention, reactivation, and all those other things that come with continued business growth. And then finally, phase number three is what we call the marathon phase, where this is really when we start to shift psychologically and or tactically the things that we do in terms of shifting our focus from just sprint to really helping plant roots, so to speak. And this will make sense as we kind of move forward in terms of the whole process. So if you guys are ready, we're going to dig right in. We're going to go right to it. So I think the first place for us to really start is understanding the problem with most marketing approaches when it comes to brick and mortar business, okay? And I think this could apply to online businesses as well. This is a really common problem. Basically, most are stuck on what I call the new patient or new customer roller coaster. And it looks something like this, and you guys can tell me if this sounds familiar or not. But basically, what I see happen all the time is chiropractors are looking for some new strategy, some new tactic, some new shiny way of getting new patients through the door. They find some new thing, they do it, It works more often than not. They do work. You're excited. You're high-fiving everybody. Yay, new patients. NP, you're going to see that new stands for new patients, right? But then what inevitably winds up happening is all of a sudden it starts to fade, right? And then bummer, it's not working like it was before. It just kind of fizzles and fades. And then all of a sudden we come up with the next new tactic, right? And then hooray, it works again. Yay, more new patients, right? And then bummer, it's not working like it was before. And so it's just this cycle over and over and over, and it starts to wear on you. And that's what I noticed in practice is when we did have, the occasional home run here or there, more often than not, these types of approaches weren't terribly sustaining. And so it definitely does wear on you. So it's extremely unpredictable. And with that unpredictable nature of things, it doesn't really allow you to create a whole lot of stability and long-term growth. And so really what we're going to kind of cover in this journey isn't just how to get you 100 new customers, but also how to set you on the right path so that you can have stability and then a path towards long-term growth. And again, I hope this makes total sense. So basically, phase 1, we're going to be covering weeks 1 through 6. And the key funnel that we're going to be using here is something we call the reboot funnel, okay? And I'm going to walk you through this kind of step by step here. We begin with the offer, and the offer itself is fairly straightforward and fairly explanatory, and that is, it's a free lunch workshop, okay? And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail here in just a moment. We have, it says offer times 3 because there's 3 general approaches that we utilize in this whole process, both online and offline. The interesting thing, I had kind of a big paradigm shift years ago when I first started this lunch workshop funnel. I was explaining it to Russell, and I said, well, I said, he asked me, well, how's it work? What's the funnel look like? And I said, it's not really a funnel. And he said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, we have these lead boxes that we use. We have an approach that we use in terms of making direct contacts with business owners because, it's obviously a direct in-person lunch workshop. And then we obviously do have an actual funnel landing page where we'll get people signed up too, but that's not the primary thing, or that's not the only thing we utilize. And I said, we set these lunch workshops in, and then we go and I explain the process to him. And he said, well, what is it that you think a funnel is? And that's when I had a huge paradigm shift, because the thing that's interesting, and I kind of, in my chapter that I wrote in the book, I kind of mentioned this, that sometimes, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but sometimes I feel like brick and mortar businesses are kind of separate and distinct from the online world, where we kind of, in some ways, play by a different set of rules, in the sense that we face people, face to face in the, in the real world. And especially if we're service-based providers, there's a lot of face time that's involved there. And so sometimes we can kind of think of our process as different, right? And I know that's probably only natural. I know Dan Kennedy used to have like this big sign in quotes. I think I'd heard this from Russell and other people too that have been to his events, where it was like this common excuse, but my business is different, right? Everybody's a little bit different. And so anyways, I told Russell this, and he said to me, he said that question, he's like, well, what do you think a funnel is? And that's when my mind kind of began to really start to expand as to what funnels really are. Funnels, definitely involve an online component, what you're going to find, but a lot of it, especially for us service-based brick and mortar businesses, involve just as much, if not more so, face-to-face offline stuff that's happening as well. And so I don't want us to get so rigidly caught up in thinking, well, the offline part, that's not really a funnel. Yes, it's all, if it's taking people incremental steps closer to us and doing business with us and allowing us the opportunity ultimately to be able to serve them at the highest level possible, it doesn't matter what portion we delineate as offline or online or whatever. Just the process is the funnel, right? That's really what we're talking about. So when we talk about funnels moving forward, it's the process that may involve online and offline together. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And so we have 3 different approaches for initially setting that up. And again, the offer is very simple and it's very straightforward. It's a free, fully catered lunch workshop at the place of business. We go to them, we deliver the lunch workshop. And so at that point in time, we work through a setup process. And again, we don't need to overcomplicate this. It's a matter of just follow-up. I learned first from Russell. I'll probably be quoting a lot of things that I've heard and learned from Russell, because he's been not only a close friend of mine, but a mentor of mine. But he said fortune is in the follow-up. And so we don't want to overcomplicate that. The setup process is really just making sure that we work through all of the logistics of the decision makers and making sure that we work with them to get things set up, the date, the time, the head count, all of those different things. And then what happens is we actually go to the place of business, we deliver the presentation, the lunch workshop, as well as the fully catered lunch. And at the end of it, we invite them to come in as new patients. We extend to them a new patient offer. And what happens is we get new patients. In PA, you'll see that stands for new patient acquisition. So there's new patient acquisition or new customer acquisition for those who may not be dealing in the healthcare space if you're not a healthcare professional. So at this point in time, I always make the caveat, when I lay this out, at this stage, most people are like, well, yeah, that seems pretty simple. That's a lunch workshop. And that is true. When I first started into practice, I hired this big box consulting group, and they were using a lot of kind of very old school methods, including what they called lunch and learns. And they actually gave us a lunch and learn template, a presentation that we would use. And there were two very, very big gaping holes in this approach that we sought to remedy when we built this funnel out. And so much so that it is a completely different funnel altogether. Problem number one is that the presentation that they gave us, the template that we were working from there, was what I call the thinly veiled sales pitch, right? And you can know immediately off the bat a thinly veiled sales pitch when you realize you're not really giving a whole lot of value. Instead, it's really just one big kind of setup and a big gotcha, right? The only value that people are going to get out of it is if they actually buy what it is you're selling, meaning they come in and see you. So it was like something like, a big rah-rah chiropractic presentation, 101 reasons why everyone needs the chiropractor. And the punchline at the end for people to actually get value from what we were teaching and sharing there was that they actually had to come in and become a new patient. And I hated that feeling because that led to problem number two. It only fed into problem number two. Problem number two was what I call, it's one shot is all you got, right? And it was basically the pitch itself at the end, right? So what happened was we knew that it was, I knew leading into it that it was the thinly veiled sales pitch. And then therefore what happened is it's that kind of proverbial roller coaster effect where it's like, the drop is coming, and then all of a sudden, okay, it's time for the pitch and hope we do it right, because if we don't pitch it just right, then all of a sudden we're going to blow it and no one's going to sign up and it's going to be a total bust and we've wasted our time, we've wasted our money, and it was extremely frustrating, depressing, discouraging, and all that stuff. And what I realized was, number one, if this was going to really work long term, we had to do something better than a thinly veiled sales pitch, which is what allowed us to rework it from the beginning to an actual workshop that was value-based. That's secret number one. If you're going to do workshops, and I don't care if you're a chiropractor, an orthodontist, a dentist, a plumber, an accountant, a lawyer, any service-based business or brick-and-mortar-based business can do this same approach. But it has to be done first and foremost through the lens of a value-based workshop. And when I say value-based, what I mean is, what is a common problem that you can help to address in this workshop that you can give them immediate value, whether they decide to do business with you or not, whether they decide to come in and become a new patient or a customer of yours. How can you deliver such overwhelming value to them that they can walk away from the workshop feeling like that was worth my time and attention, that was really, really good? And so we created a workshop we called the 30-minute reboot, and it's basically a 30-minute morning routine that we can teach everybody that is designed to do three specific things. Number one, we say it's designed to help reduce stress. Number two, it's designed to help boost energy and productivity in the workplace. And then number three, it's designed to help eliminate common pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, headaches, a lot of these things that people commonly experience. And so we realized, look, this could be a huge value add to people if we could kind of tackle all three of those things: stress, fatigue, and pain, right? And so the question that you have to ask when kind of inventing or creating your workshop is, what's a common problem that you could find in the workplace that you could help solve for people within your realm of expertise? And that might require some creative kind of massaging there. No pun intended in the healthcare space, right? But if you can kind of figure out a way that you could give them a value-based workshop to help them solve a problem, you're onto something there, right? So, and I give some examples in the book as far as just some off the cuff ideas there. But just understand, right? You want to be value based in that sense. If you lead with the value, what we're doing is we're employing here what Robert Cialdini refers to in his book as the law of reciprocity. And there's a great article, it's like a paragraph long, you could read it in like 5 minutes if you Google it, by Seth Godin, called Hacking Reciprocity. And the problem with the first workshop approach that I talked about was it was a classic example of hacking reciprocity, where basically you do a half-hearted attempt at providing something that looks like upfront, something of value. It's camouflaged in value, but it's not real value. It's just fake value, right? And so the idea is we want to lead with real value. What we teach at our workshops has been tested and proven. I've done the math. We've done well over 500 workshops, and the feedback we get every single time, whether people come in and see us or not, is that people feel that we've delivered great value, and that has a powerful effect and impact long-term that we'll talk about in a second. The second part of it, addressed there, is that one shot is all you got. What I did to alleviate the anxiety, frustration, and pit in the stomach that happens there is I realized we don't just have one shot. If we could frame this in terms of it being an ongoing funnel or an ongoing conversation, which is what I often refer to funnels as, is this authentic value-based ongoing conversation, then all of a sudden, we don't have to cross our fingers and just hope that a bunch of people sign up. We've got systems that are in place that will allow us to have an ongoing opportunity to engage with people in a very meaningful way, that with each of those engagements increases the likelihood or the odds that we'll get more people along the way, right? That we can actually start building some momentum with that. So what happens there is we do the invitation, we consistently get new patients from that, but then what happens along the way is with the information we collect at the workshop, and I'll share with you how to do that really easy. It's a very low confrontation way. My introduction, and again, you can mold this and tweak this however you want, but my introduction to the workshop is something like this. Hey there, my name is Dr. Chad Woolner. We are super appreciative that you guys have allowed us this opportunity to come in and provide you guys with this lunch workshop. What we want to do, our primary goal today, is to provide you guys with as much value as possible. To that end, what we're going to do is we're going to pass around a sign-up sheet. If you put down your name and your email, what we're going to do is we're going to send you all of the notes from the workshop today, as well as a bunch of free resources that we're going to be sharing with you guys. That way you guys don't have to take notes. You guys can just enjoy the lunch as we do this workshop, and then you'll be able to get access to everything that we're going to be doing for you guys. Is that fair? Cool? Great. Awesome. And then I also let them know right up front, at the end of every workshop we always extend a special invitation to anybody who would like to come in and see us. But we want you to understand that our primary focus today is to provide as much value as possible. Cool? Cool. All right. And then we move forward. Total transparency makes it super easy. People are already pre-framed and set up to know that at the end there will be a pitch or an invitation of sorts, but it's very low pressure. And that does a tremendous amount of alleviating any sort of pressure on my shoulders of, oh, okay, I hope we do this just right. They know, like, we'll invite them in. And if it makes sense, it makes sense, right? But then from there, what happens is with everybody, we're able to provide them with what we call a re-invite sequence, where basically with each of those sequences, we're able to deliver everything we promised, the notes from the workshop, as well as the different components or pieces of the workshop that we shared, the free resources that we promised that we would send to them. And so we're able to send those free resources. They're able to download those inside the funnel. But then with each of those opportunities, and typically near the end, we're able to do another invite to them. Hey, if for some reason you weren't able to sign up and come in and take advantage of the invitation that we had made, maybe now's the time. We'd love to see you. Come on in, right? And so what happens is that increases the number of new patients that come in as a result of that. Now it's no longer one shot is all you got. We got these multiple opportunities to have a meaningful conversation. And it's not set up in a cheesy or corny way of you just constantly pushing for the sale, but instead you're communicating in, again, a value-based way that makes sense, that's authentic, that's engaging, and just it makes sense, right? So then from there, we don't end there. What we do is we put them into what we call an OCS, or an ongoing communication sequencer system. Now, what this might look like in terms of this whole process and system is, if you've read Russell's book, .com Secrets, which if you haven't, you need to read it because it's a phenomenal book, and a lot of the principles and concepts that I utilize have been influenced, obviously, largely by things I've learned from that book. But he talks about, a soap opera sequence, and if you don't know what that is, just read his book. It'll walk through it in detail. And then daily Seinfeld emails. These are the types of things that we want to kind of talk about in that ongoing communication system or sequence. And what that does is that increases over time the percentage of passive new patients that come through, because what you're doing, the big picture here that you need to shift from isn't new patient getting, right? That's, I think, most small brick and mortar business owners, they're very kind of myopic in terms of their thinking of what this game is all about. It's about getting new customers. And at the end of the day, look, when push comes to shove, your job is twofold. It's getting new customers and keeping new customers. And I get that. That's all of our job, right? But the big picture, if we step back and we look at it, is really the key, or the secret, if you will, is audience building. We're building an audience, and how we communicate with that audience and how we maintain a relationship with that audience is through the ongoing communication system or sequence. And that's kind of the unsung hero in all of this process. And you're going to see that over and over and over again with the funnels that we utilize, right? So when we look at this, if we were to wire this worst case scenario, you'd have to really, really screw things up to not be able to pull out an average of 2 new patients per workshop. We've been doing this, like I said, over 500 workshops. We consistently average well above that, but I always like to wire things like worst case scenario for docs or for individuals who are learning this, so that you can kind of have faith in the system and know, okay, at least 2 new patients each time you go out and do this, okay? So assuming those numbers, okay, and let me explain to you averages. Like when you look at statistics and when you look at averages and things like that, it's never this, beautifully ironed out, like, oh, it's 2 patients every single time. Actually, what it looks like is something like this. Your first workshop you go out and you do, the universe is going to test you and you're not going to get anything, right? Second one, maybe nothing again, right? You learn along the way. Third one, you get 5. Fourth one, you get 2. Fifth one, you get 6. Sixth one, you get 1, and so at the end of the day, you'll start to see a clear pattern emerge after you do these consistently, where when you iron it out, worst case scenario, it's going to look like 2. I always say with most docs, 2 to 3 new patients per workshop is a very safe assumption, especially if you follow it in terms of the way that we've kind of put this together here. It's very straightforward, very simple, not a lot of moving parts here, but you could at least average 2, right? So basically, what we've got here is a consistent vehicle to allow you to average 2 each time you use the vehicle. So the goal is to set up 3 workshops per week, 3 per week. And again, that's a very doable method if you follow the system. The key is the fortune of the follow-up, right? So weeks 1 through 6, assuming that we're doing 3 workshops per week, okay? Now all of a sudden we're averaging 6 patients per week. So if you do the math, and we'll kind of do some more math moving forward, and I know marketing math is always like fun and stuff like that, always like the hypotheticals, but at least have the faith and understand that what I'm sharing in terms of marketing math is based off of years of experience, not only in my practice, but literally hundreds of other chiropractors who have used these same systems in their practices. And so it's we're wiring this based off of very, very safe assumptions here. So imagine 6 new patients per week is what we're generating here from this funnel. So this is kind of moving forward. This is kind of phase 1, okay? So now we move into phase 2, okay? This is weeks 7 through 12. So number 1, you don't want to stop doing the reboot funnel. You want to keep that going. One of the biggest mistakes that I see, and I'm guilty of this to a certain extent too sometimes, is that when you start building momentum, it's real easy for us to take our foot off the gas pedal or not fuel the fire. Russell did a podcast episode not that long ago on his podcast. It was called Fuel the Fire or The Fire Dies or something like that. You can look it up, go dig through. And when he talked about fueling the fire, he was talking, he mentions a friend in the podcast, but he doesn't name who his friend is. It was me that he was talking about, who I had experienced a pinch at that time in practice, as well as in my consulting and whatnot. And I talked to him just in passing, and he's like, dude, like, are you doing your weekly webinars? Are you doing the workshops? Are you doing the consistent things to fuel the fire? And I was like, no. And I was kind of sheepish about it. He's like, you need to fuel the fire or it dies, so we don't want to lose momentum in any of this process here. So weeks 7 through 12, we're going to keep running the reboot funnel, but then we're going to add in the epic funnel as well. You probably don't see me pointing here. I'm pointing at a big TV here that's on my side here, so I should actually be pointing like right in front of me here. So with this funnel, now we're going to introduce what we call the epic funnel, okay, or the epic event funnel. And this is kind of a fun one. I've got kind of a history here. I should have pulled in some pictures. I think they'll be in the book. But Russell has been to every single one of our epic events that we've done. So we do an invite sequence, and what we're doing is we're inviting our audience and or other friends in the community to an event announcement page. This is a page we do in ClickFunnels, and basically the purpose of the event announcement page is very simple: to get people to RSVP for our event. And what's interesting is that for a lot of people who maybe aren't using ClickFunnels or aren't sold on ClickFunnels, they'll say like, well, can't I just do an Eventbrite page? And they do. They'll put together an Eventbrite page. And that is one of the biggest mistakes that I see in terms of events and the success of the event funnel itself, is because it fundamentally misses the mark on what it takes to get people to not just RSVP for the event, but to show up for the event. And in this kind of underlying psychology of marketing lies one of the greatest secrets in terms of effective funnels and marketing that applies to all funnels and all marketing and all business, not just the event funnel. And I first really kind of learned this concept from Dana Derricks in his book. What was it? It was a copywriting book of his. But he poses this question that anytime you propose a product, program, service, basically a solution to people, what you have to understand is your greatest competition in business is not who you think it is or not what you think it is. Most of us think that, like, if you're a chiropractor, your competition is the other chiropractors, or if you're a dentist, it's the other dentists, or a physical therapist, the other physical therapists, or a doctor, the other doctors, or whatever it is, right? A plumber, the other plumbers. That is not true. Your greatest competition is the prospect's ability to choose to do nothing. Okay, and I'm going to repeat that again. Your greatest competition in business is the prospect's ability to choose to do nothing at all, right? Anytime you propose an offer to them, they can either take the offer, whatever that offer looks like, whatever that choice is, they can either do it or do nothing at all. And what you have to understand is it's far easier for them to do nothing at all. And this is especially the case when it comes to inviting them to come to an event, okay? And this is why you're always going to have a very, very poor turnout and a very mediocre at best event funnel if it's just a single Eventbrite page, okay? Which is why ClickFunnels is so powerful, is because there's more that we can do that you'll see here in this whole process. But basically, the purpose of this funnel is not just to get people to RSVP for the event, but to actually show up for the event. The story that I always tell to illustrate this is the very first patient appreciation event that we did in practice. When we first started into practice, our big box consulting group that we had hired said, well, you guys need to do a patient appreciation event. So we said, okay. So we paid thousands of dollars for glossy postcards. We canvassed our neighborhoods. We sent out flyers. We told all of our patients about it, and we got a bunch of RSVPs. And so we had very high hopes and expectations for this patient appreciation event that we were holding. And when the day of the event came, the wind was kind of knocked out of our sails, to say the least. We wound up, I want to say, seeing maybe in total people show up to this event less than 10. It was pathetic, to say the least. It was very discouraging, to say the least. And so I always joke, I don't know what's worse, getting nobody to RSVP and nobody to show up, or getting, tons of people to RSVP and no one to show up. I think it feels worse that way. But the whole idea is this: don't think that the job is done just by getting a bunch of people to RSVP to come to your event. That's not enough, okay? Because again, we got to think in terms of them and their life, okay? What's going to be easier for them, to come to your event or to not come to the event? And you have to understand, right? What are the current constraints upon them? Because the offer that you're making to them, even though it's quote unquote free, it does have a cost. And in fact, the cost to this is perhaps even greater to some degrees. What you're asking for is their time and their attention, which is their energy. You're asking for people to give you their energy, right? And when it comes to time and attention, these are finite resources, right? Money replenishes, right? And so if you're asking them to buy something, people can buy something, money comes, money goes, but money comes back again, it replenishes. Time and attention do not replenish, right? It's gone. Once it's gone, it's gone. And so you got to understand, in terms of helping to get people to take your event and put it on the, kind of back here, and then maybe I'll show up to that. I'll RSVP and maybe we'll show up. That's kind of a maybe we should, to an absolute must, is you've got to break through the attention. You got to fight for that attention, and you got to fight for that urgency to where it makes a priority for them. Because again, what you're competing with is little Johnny's soccer practice and little Susie's ballet practice and church and school and all the other time and attention constraints that a normal family or normal people have in their life, right? So what we figured out was kind of a secret to helping cut through the noise, which is what we call an intensification sequence. Once they've RSVP'd, we don't want to stop there. We want to intensify the process through an intensification sequence here. And what that might look like is these are very specifically timed and specifically revealing emails and pages in the funnel that allow us to kind of give a little bit more detail as to surprises and exciting things that they can expect at the event. We throw in definitely urgency and scarcity in there. So we'll say things like, hey, for the first 20 people to show up to the event, we're going to do this special thing for them. Oh, and by the way, at the event, we've got this surprise as well. And then the next email is going to reveal yet again something else really cool and surprising that we're going to be doing each step of the way. And so we have this series of intensification sequences that lead up to the event, and then we actually have the epic event. And so I put a picture up here to kind of demonstrate, but it doesn't do it justice. Our greatest epic event we ever had, we had 500 plus people in attendance. We had over 500 people, which is crazy to think about, right? We're a small practice in Meridian, Idaho, and yet we had over 500 people show up to this event. The typical event that we throw is usually 200 to 300 people consistently. The first event we ever threw that Russell came to, we had, I think it was 220 some people that were at that event. Okay. So once they're at the event, what do we do? Well, at that point in time, we don't just want to have chaos there and just be like, hope that somehow the goodwill pays off and we get people. We want to have some structure and a process and a system, i.e. a funnel to this. So what do we do in person? Well, what we call GNO, which stands for glue and offer, right? We want to glue, kind of proverbially speaking, butts in the seats so we can have a captive audience there, and then we want to extend an offer. What we've come to find is a very simple and easy way to do this very consistently is to hold a raffle. Most people are going to sit tight for a raffle. One of the most common events that we'll do is at a movie theater because, again, it's a really easy captive audience. What we'll do is we'll simply, at the beginning of the movie, here's a pro tip for you guys. At the beginning of the movie, we'll play, instead of the previews, we'll have on loops testimonial videos. Going, which is, again, kind of a cool pro tip because it helps pre-frame things. And then we'll also let them know at the end of the movie, don't leave, we're going to be having a raffle. We'll usually have the raffle table at the front of the theater. Obviously, this is going to require cooperation from a movie theater that you'll want to work with. Typically, community theaters are really good to work with. So just some thoughts there. But glue and offer means that we get an opportunity to have a captive audience, get their attention, and be able to then, during that raffle, extend an offer to them, a special offer for them to come in as new patients. And so what happens there is when we do it, we do get new patients. Again, the NPA, the new patient acquisition. But then from there, again, we don't rely on a one-shot is all you got approach. What we do is we do an offer extension over time. And what that does, again, is that gives us even more new patients. That offer extension, again, we want it to be value-based and not just a, pitch fest. And so what we'll do there is we'll send out like pictures from the event, a video, highlight reel of the event, things like that continue to engage people, that creates a sense of community, a sense of feeling and belonging. But then it also in a roundabout way creates a little bit of that FOMO, that fear of missing out, so that helps bleed into and lead into future events that you do as well. But then again, it also gives us an opportunity to engage people and invite them, for those who maybe weren't able to sign up or maybe just weren't able to attend the event. And so again, that allows us to get multiple chances, multiple opportunities to extend that offer out to our audience. And so again, if you look at this from kind of a mile up, you'll understand, like, we're getting patients to come to this event. We're getting non-patients to come to this event. We're getting friends in the community. We're getting our audience to ultimately come to the event. And when we do these events, we not only extend out new patient offers, but we'll do like reactivation offers, and we'll qualify it by saying, look, if you haven't been in a while, if it's been a while, let's get reacquainted, come in, and we'll do a special offer there. So what this event does is kind of kills three birds with one stone. It gets us new patients, it gets us reactivations, and then it also is great for retention, in the sense that it builds, kind of that sense and feeling of community in the audience, right? Make sense? So here's the cool part with this. We've been doing these for quite some time. We average at least 20 to 30 new patients. Now, the first event that we went to, that Russell was at, he came because he was kind of at the beginning intrigued about it. He was just like, how does this even work? How is this a funnel, and so he was just kind of curious. And what was cool about it is that he was looking at it entirely through the lens of from the lens of a marketer, right? Not as like an actual patient or anything like that, even though he is a patient, right? And so he's looking at it, and at the end of this first movie we ever did, we weren't sure what to expect when we first did it, but we had like the proverbial table rush at the end of it. We had 24, 25 new patients line right up right there. And he was like, it was the coolest thing to see his reaction. He was just like, whoa, what is going on here? And so it was really cool to get his feedback from his perspective of seeing that whole process play out. And since then, it's just been duplicated over and over and over again. And so that's kind of how we take that at that point in time. So now it's kind of a checkout time, okay? How are we doing so far? We're on track to beat 100 new customers. I'll show you. So 2 new patients times 3, right? So we're doing 3 workshops a week. That's 2. That's 6 new patients per week. So 6 times 14 weeks is 84 new patients, okay? Plus, you add in 20 new patients from the Epic funnel, that's 104 new patients. But we're not stopping there. It's time to add some fuel to the fire at this point in time, okay? So now we're shifting over into phase 3. Okay, this is weeks 7 through 14. This is what we call the proof funnel. This one's a lot more simple because there's not many moving parts to it. It's more of a passive approach. Again, this is the marathon, right? This is the marathon phase we're going to be using as our secret weapon to build stability, what we call social proof. If you're familiar with this, most people are. Again, this is talking about the book Influence. Robert Cialdini talks about this whole idea of social proof, right? So we'll drive traffic from a variety of sources, you name it. We'll use Facebook videos, Facebook ads, pay-per-click ads, search engine optimization, taking people to what we call proof pages or proof funnels, okay? Typically, we'll get new patients directly. It's a direct kind of call to action from this. And then obviously, we'll put people into our ongoing communication system as well. We average typically around 10 to 15 new patients from this funnel once it's up and running. But again, this is not an overnight funnel. This takes some time to kind of let it marinate, so to speak, because again, that's kind of how social proof works, right? We got to build this. So what's the secret to the proof pages? Here is the secret. It is compelling video testimonials, okay? That is the key. That's the secret sauce there. So proof pre-frames position, okay? So let me explain to you kind of how this whole thing works. And this might sound a little bit kind of geeky in marketing theory, but hopefully you kind of allow me suspend reality for a minute and kind of allow me to geek out, because I think you guys are going to find this really kind of a cool concept here that we talk about. We call this the position ascension loop. Have you noticed that certain businesses like ClickFunnels develop an almost terminal velocity where all of a sudden it's just like the business collectively has this just Midas touch where everything it seems like, right? Everything they do, everything they implement just turns to gold and it just works for their favor. And to a certain extent, it is true. They do, to a certain extent, kind of have that kind of Midas touch. And I'm going to explain how that process whole looks like. So we start with superior positioning. What do we mean by superior positioning? Superior positioning is becoming known as the go-to expert for blank. That's the simplest, fastest, easy way. That's what we're all locally trying to do, is become what we kind of call a local cultural authority, right? So as a chiropractor, our clinic, Align Integrated Medical, we're an integrated clinic. We want to become known as the very best at what we call the core four. And this might sound, even for some, still like too broad, and we still kind of fight with this a little bit. So I'll just be honest in terms of narrowing it down. But the core four: neck and back issues, neuropathy, knee pain, and metabolic problems. That's what we focus in on. We want to become known for the best. If we had to choose one, gun to the head, right, it would be neuropathy. We want to become known as the number one go-to clinic for neuropathy. We have a great program that we use for neuropathy, so that's really where we focus. Once we establish superior positioning, some really cool things start to happen as a natural result of that. Number one, increased perception. When people have that increased perception, what happens is barriers begin to fall. They begin to perceive you as the expert rather than the salesman. Okay, when you can make that shift from being perceived or viewed as somebody trying to sell them, and now all of a sudden somebody who has a solution to their problem, what then happens is we make that shift to enhanced expectation, right? With enhanced expectation. And again, you think about this from the standpoint of some of your favorite brands, right? In terms of their positioning, the perception of those brands, and then the expectation with those brands. We come to certain brands inherently before they even make any sort of a pitch to us of a new product, program, or service, with certain expectations with those. Think about Apple, right? Already preloaded or pre-framed, right, with certain perceptions and certain expectations. But when we have positive expectations, what happens is we make a shift even further to something called anticipation. There's a great book called Suggestible You, which really discusses and dives deep into the science behind anticipation. But what's really cool, again, and kind of geek out on this for a minute, is what we start to do is we start to hack into the brain a little bit and increase something in the brain known as dopamine. Dopamine is one of the most misunderstood chemicals in the brain. Most people are familiar with it and have heard of it and think of it oftentimes as a reward hormone. And that's not exactly correct. It's kind of like that, but the shift in thinking with dopamine is that it is an anticipatory hormone. When you anticipate a positive outcome that you're looking for, dopamine increases. And what dopamine's job is to help see things through so that you get the outcome from that anticipation. And what happens is, so long as your business can deliver to some degree value to people, right? We're hoping and we're assuming that your business isn't just built on a house of cards, that it's all sizzle and no steak, right? But hopefully you've got a good business that has a good product, program, or service. We're just going to assume that that's the case, right? Then all of a sudden what happens is you get superior outcomes, right? If you have somebody that has certain expectations, positive expectations, and then even more importantly, a positive anticipation, you will get superior outcomes. One of the things that this book talks about, Suggestible You says, is there are actual studies, scientific studies that show that if you hand somebody a colored drink with a Gatorade label on it, even if it isn't really Gatorade, it's fake, it's not real Gatorade, they actually will perform better than they would have otherwise. They've also shown studies that if you hand somebody an MIT pen before a test, just having an MIT brand pen, they will perform better on the test than a regular pen. It's crazy, right? Or the other one is wine. If you take wine and you put it in a fancy bottle, a very artistic bottle, the actual taste changes to people. They've done scientific research to show that it's not that, and the crazy part is, it's not that the taste changes, artificially. It literally changes to them. Their perception of the taste changes just based off of that one thing. And it all is all about wiring and hacking into that anticipation, right? So when you get superior outcomes, what happens there? What happens is you get enhanced reputation. With enhanced or improved or increased reputation, it reinforces and shifts back over into and reinforces that positioning. And so hopefully you start to see it kind of has this snowball effect where think about it like either a big snowball rolling down a hill or like a planet. As a planet increases in size, so does its gravitational pull, right? I know that might sound silly or corny, but this is how we do it. This is how we create long-term stability in any business, whether it's brick and mortar or online or whatever. It's this whole process. And again, one of the things you want to look to is look at what Russell Brunson did himself for ClickFunnels. What was one of the very first things that they did when they started gaining momentum? Well, if you look at the strategy, because I saw it all along, I was one of the first beta testers of ClickFunnels before it went crazy big, right? Is they started looking for key influencers and capturing their success stories. They went to Organifi, Drew Canoli, and they got his success story. They went to Liz Binion and they got her success story. They went to Garrett White and they captured his success story. And all of a sudden they started developing this portfolio of success stories that they started showcasing. And all that they did was just this very process that I'm showing you here. It started slowly but surely increasing their positioning as becoming known as the leader in online funnel software. And then all of a sudden what that did was that increased or improved the perception. And then with that, the increased expectation, the increased anticipation, people started getting superior outcomes. And now all of a sudden we've got these 2 Comma Club awards that are popping up everywhere. And then with that, you get enhanced reputation, which reinforces the positioning over and over and over again. This is what we call the position ascension loop, right? So this is really the heart and soul of creating stability in your business, okay? This is where you shift away from, remember we talked about that new patient or new customer roller coaster? This is how we start to create incremental, steady, stable growth over time in your business, okay? So now, when we talk about how to capture testimonials the right way, I'm going to walk you through this process and create just a very, very simple, kind of framework for you to be able to do this. Step 1, you're going to set up your smartphone interview style. And so you can see here just kind of an image here. We just place it in front of your customer or your patient, and we're going to be just sitting down and talking with them conversationally. So that way it's not threatening to them. It's really simple. It's really easy, okay? This is how you go about capturing these success stories. Step 2, you're going to create 5 to 10 key interview questions, and you'll just have a simple outline in front of you that you'll ask. It'll be like, when did your problem start? What was your problem interfering with? Get deep, get emotional as you can get. That's really, again, going to be the key to this. Is if it's just boring rehearsal of facts and details, it's not going to have the same punch. And so you really want to get it very meaningful to them. Now, in my world, it's not that difficult to be able to find this, in terms of people. We hear incredible stories about people who couldn't play with their kids, people who couldn't, people who are dealing with severe deficits functionally. They couldn't walk, they couldn't run, they couldn't play sports, they couldn't hike, they couldn't be with their loved ones, so it's real easy for us to get there. But you want to find out very specifically, what was the problem interfering with? How was it interfering with their life? What was their biggest fear? How did you first meet, the business or the individual or whatever? How did you first hear about it? What was that experience like? Get them to tell that experience. And what is your life like now, right? So get a contrast. What was it like before? What is it like now? That's really the kind of sandwich that we want to do. And then I'll typically get some sort of a close at the end. My name is so-and-so. I love to do this. I love to do this. I'm a patient at Align Integrated Medical, or I'm a customer of so-and-so, and that's it. Boom. And that's how we close it out. So then step 3, we're going to do Q&A with the answers restating the questions. So what do I mean by that? You want to do it in such a way that people understand what the question is, okay? So for instance, what was your biggest fear with your problem? You don't want them answering it like blank. You want them to restate the question. My biggest fear with the problem was blah, 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 blah. It was that I wasn't going to be able to resume my normal life or whatever. You don't want it to be a short answer in the sense that just giving the answer. They need to be able to restate that. And it'll make sense when you edit it all together. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So that all of a sudden what happens is it's a very smooth flowing piece, okay, that you do. So now all of a sudden, step 4, we edit the footage. You can use just about any software editor. iMovie is really easy. It's free on a Mac, or you can get a bunch of other different softwares. For PC, there's one that's like $90 called Movavi, Movavi. Movavi.com. That's a really simple editor. But what we want to do is you can see there in this picture how there's all these little clips there. What we do is we edit out the parts of you talking or asking the questions. You cut that out so that it's all just a series of answers. And if they've answered it correctly in a very conversational way, it'll all make sense and flow logically. So that it'll start out where it'll say, I had an accident. This is my assistant back in the day. This was my marketing assistant. We did this just as kind of a training video to show docs how to do this. It was a real story about how she had injured her back on a boating trip that she had taken with her family. And so she said, I was on a boating trip. I fell and I hit my back on the propeller and it hurt really, really bad. And then so then that's what she said. And then the next question I would ask her is, so what was your greatest fear? And then I would cut out me asking her that question, and she would restate, my greatest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to get back to doing the things I wanted to. I love boating. I love dancing. I love doing a lot of active things. And I was just really scared that wasn't going to happen. And then we asked her, well, how did you first hear about Dr. Woolner? We cut that part out. And then it's her telling, well, I first learned about Dr. Woolner from, a friend of mine. He recommended him. And so I came into his clinic and yada, yada. But you get the point, right? We're cutting it out so that all of a sudden we just string these together. So it's just this smooth, continuous piece. So it almost seems like they're just kind of speaking extemporaneously, and it's just all one kind of smooth, solid piece. Okay. So then we do that. So then the next step 5, that's not step 4. Step 5 is you want to add music. You can go to Audio Jungle, premiumbeat.com, bensound.com. I know there's probably a ton of other places. Get royalty-free music. It's worth it to invest in it. Pay $20, $40, something like that. You put a song, pull down the volume nice and low underneath. Make the song appropriate to kind of the energy level and the mood of the piece. If it's a very active lifestyle piece, somebody that loves to do sports, maybe something a little bit more lively and upbeat. If it's a sad story about, somebody who, was almost dying and you saved their life and it was very dramatic, then maybe a dramatic piece, but just kind of feel that out. You want to throw music into that. And then all of a sudden, you put it all together into a funnel, right? And so our proof funnel is very simple. It's just their story. We talk to a specific audience who can relate to that story, and we extend an offer in the funnel. And that's really pretty much it there. Recap. Phase 1, the sprint phase, we use the reboot funnel to average 6 new patients per week. Okay. Phase 2, that's 2 new patients, 3 workshops a week. Phase 2, we use the Epic Event funnel to average 20 new patients. And then phase 3, we begin using social proof to begin establishing positioning in your community by using social proof. So that gets us well over 100 customers or 100 new patients in 100 days. And then more importantly, what it really does is it sets you a very, very solid foundation for continued long-term stability and growth. So that's it. That's how we do what we do. If I were to go back in time, get into the, hypothetical time machine, this is exactly what I would do from square one. And I could assure you that it would be a lot easier than it was at the beginning because I didn't have this type of framework or strategy. And I certainly didn't have ClickFunnels when I first started into practice like I do now. And so this is exactly how I would go about doing it. And I hope that this has made perfect sense for you. And I hope that this has been extremely valuable. And I hope this helps you on your journey wherever you're at. If you're just getting started and you're looking to implement funnels, or if you're looking to just make some changes to really kind of revamp your business or your practice, whatever that looks like, I hope that this really does help you. I hope that this has been very practical and very tactical. So thanks for watching. And hopefully we'll get to share more with you in the future.